Hi, Kathleen. Hi. So let's get started. Thanks for joining the podcast. It's on being Divya. I just joining in.
Hello, Suman. Hi, Nitesh. Hi.
Yeah, hi Divya. Hi.
I'm sorry, just say that again.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Um,
Yeah, I can hear you okay, Divya. Can you hear
Uh,
me
s-
okay?
yes, I can, Nitesh. Great. I think, Suman, you're having a bit of, you are a little patchy. Could you just check if you're on a.
is it better now?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, super.
Suman, do we want to get started?
Yeah, let's get started. So the topic we chose today is building resilience. And I'm sure that we will all agree that in these uncertain times, still coming out of a pandemic, resilience is very important for all of us. And I thought, who better to talk about it than my friend Nitesh Batra, who joins us today. Very quickly about him, Nitesh is a mindfulness teacher and a compassion cultivation trainer from Stanford University and runs a mindful initiative podcast. Welcome, Nitesh, and thanks for joining.
Thank you so much for having me, Suman.
Is everybody able to hear Nitesh? I found the volume a bit low, or is it just my
It is
phone?
a bit low, but
Okay. Okay,
Is this better?
yeah, this is better. So while we will keep this more conversational, I thought I'll kick it off with my perspective on resilience. But before I do that, Nitesh, when we were speaking earlier today, you mentioned about just settling down for a minute, and I thought that was wonderful. So why didn't you help us do that?
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Suman. Why don't we start with a short settling practice? And this is a very simple practice, maybe about 30 seconds to a minute. For those of you listening to us and the ones who listen to us in the future as well, why don't we all close our eyes wherever you are, if that's possible for you. And as you close your eyes, simply inhale from your nose and slowly and gently exhale from your mouth. Inhale from your nose and gently exhale as you relax. Let your thoughts settle down as you continue to breathe in a couple of more times. Relax your shoulders, relax your body. And now slowly open your eyes. I think, Suman, that would be a good start.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Nitesh, for doing that.
Yeah. Suman, there is a little feedback, and maybe if you can ask others to mute themselves.
Okay. Not sure if the feedback is from my end.
No, yeah, now it's better.
Okay. So we keep hearing this word resilience. Um, the definition is that it's the ability to recover quickly from change, hardship, or misfortune. And high resilience is what we all look for. It's about flexibility, adaptability, optimism, openness to learning, all the good stuff, right? Whereas low resilience is linked to uh, fatigue. It could be depression, cynicism, burnout, and we see a lot of that, right, when we look around. So for many of us, and some of you are listening in, if you are experiencing these, first of all, these are very normal. We all go through these phases in our life. It happens to everyone. The reason why I'm harping on this is that just because we all want high flexibility, high resilience, it's not that only you want to talk about these things. It's important to talk about all these other aspects which are linked to low resilience, because this is very normal, and especially in today's times, right? We go through these phases all the time. So the idea is to bring it out and talk about it. And it's not just ordinary people; even the most successful people face it. They may not talk much about it. In fact, recently, I think we all saw when Deepika came out publicly and told the world how she battled with depression. And if we hear her, when she really opened up, she said, I felt empty, directionless, and just that life had no meaning or purpose. And if somebody, who's so successful in the eyes of everybody else can feel like that, so it just goes to show that this is very much there, right? So yeah, I'll stop here. Maybe we'll get into the other aspects of, um, we can think of resilience at multiple levels. But let me pause here and get others' views.
This is great. Sorry, there is Suman. I think there's some feedback, like Nitesh was saying. Hello?
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Okay, I think this is Nitesh. Thank you so much for taking us through the exercise. It really needed that. Having and Suman, this is a great topic, right? Resilience. It has been the meaning of the word resilience has expanded so much, right? That it now encompasses so many things. But it's about coping, and it's about adaptive coping, right? Rather than maladaptive or coping strategies that don't work for us in terms of stress. Nitesh, do you want to come in with just what to you does resilience mean? Because I feel like the word has been used and abused so much. Can you talk to us a little bit about, resilience and a simple way of talking about resilience and what it means?
Thank you for that, Divya. And what Suman said and what you're talking about, resilience, it's something that we need. And the definition, the other aspects, the understanding depends on the person that you're speaking with. That's what happens. So for the definition, I want to take you guys through a story that I have from, so I teach Montessori kids yoga and mindfulness. And I learned so much from them, and I was trying to teach them resilience. And I took a small Russian doll, and this was a special doll that you could put on a table or anywhere, that wherever it falls, it just comes back up. And I did this little experiment with them and asked them that this is resilience. Can you define that for me? And one child, a young 7-year-old, said this beautifully. You fall and quickly get up, and that's what resilience means to me. And I think in the simplest of terms, that's what it is for me as well.
That is lovely. Thank you. Shamala, I saw you unmuted.
Yeah, I think I've practiced resilience for the major part of my life because I was moving. There seems to be some kind of a feedback, and is it bouncing back? Yeah. So resilience all my life because I moved with my husband wherever he was posted, and so the children had to go through the change of school, and I was always teaching, so I had to change my jobs. And a time came when we finally posted to a big town like Hyderabad. And I said, okay, I'm going to try something else. I'm not going to be teaching. So that's what made me get into journalism. I tried my hand at a newspaper trying to write. Then my editor was a 20-something-year-old and I was 40-something. I went to meet her and gave her a story, and she said, I'll get back to you, with a very superior look. I said, fine. As long as my name is in the byline, I will be very happy. So it did. The article appeared in the newspaper, and I was on cloud 9. I said, that means I can do it, which is a great, great, great feeling for me. I knew I could write English. but I didn't know that I could write something that people would like to read, which the newspaper would like to write, to use. Then over a period of time, I took on various interests which have worked for me and have filled in my time. And I find that that resilience and the openness to learning something new has helped me personally in a very big way. And I find that my children are doing the same. They have maybe taken a chapter from my life and are learning to be flexible, learning to, find a place for themselves. When something closes, another window opens. My daughter shut her favorite baby, that was the store that she was running, and she has kind of reinvented herself doing something else. My son has given up his bank job and he's doing something else, which is a great way to survive, because things can be very difficult if you're not happy doing what you're doing. That's my take on resilience, and I encourage everybody to take it on. Do something different, learn something new, which is great.
Yeah, that was very interesting, Shamala. Thanks for sharing. Which is kind of a segue into how we think of resilience, and I think different people have different ways of looking at it.
Yeah.
So one is, of course, major failures, right? So bouncing back from major hardship, right? And today we are living in a pandemic world. There are people who lost a loved one. Maybe somebody has developed a major illness like COVID. So those are the major ones. There's this quote from Churchill says, "Success consists of going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm." And I was really thinking about this quote, and I thought, if I look back, and I mostly spent my bulk of my career in the corporate world, I was asking, is it true that in the corporate world that people have so much failures? Because when I look at people, that many of them haven't had a steady rise, no major failures. At least that's what it looks from the outside. But I think what he's trying to say in that quote is very interesting, and I think that's what you are referring to, is that to grow, we need to push boundaries, right? We need to push boundaries and get out of what we are doing, right? Do something different. And the moment you do that, their chances of failure increase, right? So even within the job, for instance, proactively taking more responsibility or more challenges. So I think if I look at my life, and I think Nitesh, for you as well, we have pivoted. So, and of course, the need for resilience is a lot more. The other interesting thing is about the way the definition is. I was looking at the definitions. They are saying it's not only about major setbacks; it's also about minor setbacks. It's also about adapting to complex change. Like hardship, misfortune happens to us, but let's say I'm in an organization and suddenly there's a very complex change, and I'm not able to change myself, adapt myself. That's also about resilience. And then minor setbacks, irritating daily upsets, which we all go through, is also actually taken as part of the definition. So it's an interesting spectrum of the entire thing, right? Yeah.
Can I just say something? Resilience and flexibility, I guess they mean the same thing. But that is very important even in sustaining relationships. If you look at relationships, they are sustained better by flexibility on both sides. I'm sure you can see it in your own lives. It's not just the corporate world. It's not just social relationships, family relationships. Everything works on being flexible, everybody being a little adjusting and requiring resilience of all kinds.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, there was another question I think which Anand posed: is resilience and courage the same thing? And we hear a lot of these words, like you mentioned, flexibility, not giving up. So I think they're kind of connected, related, but I go back to what Nitesh said earlier, that it's the ability to bounce back when you're down, right? So as opposed to courage or flexibility, which need not be that. But of course, all these things help in resilience. So maybe Nitish, it'll be good to hear your views. What's your sense based on what we just discussed in the entire spectrum of resilience? It'll be good to hear your views.
Yeah, I think what Shamala mentioned about the changes in flexibility, and there is some sort of feedback. If others can mute, I think it might be helpful. So to grow, we have to push the boundaries. I really like that part as well. And whenever you're trying to do something, there is a change that's happening, which you talk about. And I believe that change is of two different types, right? I mean, there are challenges that you face because of the change. One is that there is suffering that comes because of the natural changes that are happening around us, which is happening all the time. And if you're unable to adapt, or if you're not mindful, to simply put it, it's very difficult to adapt to those things. And second is that there is suffering that comes because of suffering itself. That you have decided that I'm going to suffer. It might be a physical suffering or a mental suffering. And if you're able to adapt to those things, you become more resilient. When you were talking about the quote, Suman, I thought about the quote from NASA. They say failure is not an option. And but without failure we cannot learn. So irrespective, there is going to be failure. You're going to bounce back, and with these changes, suffering is going to come. So you adapt and move forward, and I think moving forward is the only way. Those are my thoughts.
Interesting. Divya, would you like to share your perspective?
I'd like to come in here. I do have I have two points, and also there could be questions, right, for the rest of the panel. But one of it is that, is it a muscle that you build, right? Is resilience a trait, or is it, the more you put yourself in situations that need you to kind of flex that muscle of, your coping strategies, is it something you grow and you build, right? Like Shamala was saying. And the second thing is there some such thing as too much resilience, right? Is there a straw that can break the camel's back? And also the effects of people who are super resilient, does it have, I keep thinking it has to have some effect on empathy and, probably an adverse effect on empathy. So those are my thoughts right now. If, Suman, Nitesh, you can jump in, Shamola, and, any of those thoughts.
Yeah, so let me just take a quick stab at that. I personally feel it is a muscle. It is something that we can develop in terms of, and there are many strategies to develop, right? So they say it's about, if you look at some of the strategies, it's a lot is about mental agility, the ability to look at the situation from multiple perspectives. Also, how you perceive it, right? Like what Nitesh said earlier, that I will suffer. So that's something I'm deciding, right? So Nitesh, I get reminded of that quote, which is that between stimulus and a response, there's a pause, right? So the stimulus is not the suffering is the outcome. So it's a match. So it's essentially all about how we are viewing it and how we are reframing it from a problem to a challenge. That can be one of the major strategies. And to the second point about being too resilient, I completely agree with you. I mean, resilience should not be seen as something where um, you bury the problem, right? Let's say the major loss, right? Let's say a loss of a loved one. Now we can justify it saying, okay, it's happened, let's move on. But then the grief is there, and we need to address that, right? If you don't do that, and if you move on, it never goes away. So I think we also have to go with, we have to kind of, depending on the nature of the loss, we'll have to give it time for us to recover and go through the motions.
Yeah, I think I would very much agree, Suman, that these things don't go away, and they're part of our mind. They're part of who we are. They become part of us. And some research that's been pointing to the within the neuroscience world that it's a muscle that you develop over a time. And I think Lucy Hone is one of the leading researchers who came up with the idea of that. For being resilient, the first thing that you do is that you have to be aware of your emotions. And I think a lot of times we're just stuck there. and you talked about the pause between the stimulus and the response. I think that I would like to just take a step back and talk a little bit more about that. That when you are hurt by something, right, you cannot really stop what the other person's saying or what the others are doing. But what is in your hands, and this is what Buddha said, like what is in your hand is the response. So the pause is before the response, and that pause is that can you be aware of what's happening in your mind? And I think if you're aware of that, then you can respond in a way that you'll be okay after the situation ends, because everything is impermanent. The time will go away, everything will go away. It is those single moments that will define who you are as an individual.
Nice,
Yeah.
that's interesting. Thank you so much, Nitesh and Suman. There were some questions on the and comments. It's actually very interesting on the chat. Anusuya talks about how resilience is having a contingent plan, right? It's an other. She calls it an OTT other than that plan, which is interesting. And Kathleen also talks about how a growth mindset could symbolize or could kind of be associated with resilience versus a fixed mindset, not so with the lack thereof. And Kanishk is asking, is resilient see a spectrum or is it an absolute, right? Any thoughts, those questions?
So my quick view is I completely agree on the growth mindset, because growth mindset is really looking at the potential rather than what is innate. And I think it's a lot to do with mental agility, ability to look at it from a different perspective. But I think the bigger issue is about how we are perceiving things, right? Um, I'll tell you my example. So, for instance, if I'm doing a session and the session doesn't go too well, again, in my view, it's not gone too well. Maybe the client has not said that, or maybe something bigger happens. Is say I lose a client. So a lot of negative thoughts that creep in, right? And at that point, I find it very difficult to think clearly and think long term. And I think that's what happens when you face hardship. It's very difficult to, at that point, to think. You almost have clouded thinking, and one of the ways to come out of that is just optimism, the ability to notice the positive, ability to expect the positive, stop focusing on the negative. Easier said than done. I know there is a negativity bias, which all of us have. And of course, focus on what we can control, right? And I think that links to reframing. So, how are we perceiving it in our mind? That becomes very important.
I agree
I
there with
agree
you,
with
because what you're
because what you
saying is what I have been through when my husband died suddenly. And I was not ready for that. But my daughter put it very well. She said, Mom, this is your second life. Now you will do what you want to do, what you can do. And you're not going to just sit at home and not do anything. So it was the question of doing something that pushed me on. I don't know. It was resilience, it was flexibility, it was the growth mindset. It was not, I didn't want to grow anywhere. It was just coping. Because I knew I was going to be lonely, I was going to be alone. Been married for 30 plus years. Children were grown up, gone away, married and away. My daughter pointed it out to me. She says, now's the time for you to live your life. Write a book, learn music, do what you want to do.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Shamola. So I'm seeing just less than a minute left. So maybe some last thoughts from you, Divya, as well as Nitesh.
Nitesh, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I would say that resilience is a choice, and if we see it as a choice, I think it will help us be more happier in our life.
I agree there with you. Resilience puts you in a better place. Puts you in a better place.
That was lovely thought, Nitesh, that resilience is a choice. I highlighted that one. Suman, the last few seconds.
No, I think this was really helpful, and I hope all of us can take these learnings and use it. And thanks for Shamula and the